Hello, and welcome to the Wolf in Tune podcast, and I hope that you and I can stay in tune. I'm really excited about my very first guest, Ricky Bell. That's the Bell in Belle Biv DeVoe, and also New Edition. I've known Ricky for over 30 years, and we worked together, full disclosure, on the Belle Biv DeVoe albums. Ricky started in New Edition. He was 12 years old. Those guys were kids, 11, 12 years old, when they started to put out hits. And they had hit after hit, Candy Girl, Mr. Telephone Man, Can You Stand the Rain. They sold over 20 million records as a group. And then as individuals, they were all extremely successful. First you had Bobby Brown, who dominated the R&B pop landscape for a little while, also famous for being the husband of Whitney Houston. You had Ralph Tresvant, Johnny Gill, also with solo records that were very successful. And you had the group Belle Biv DeVoe that put out the first album, Poison, which combined hip-hop and R&B and successfully crossed over to pop, which changed pop music forever. Ricky is an unusually humble artist and generous human being, and I think you're going to get a sense from this podcast of the depth of his humanity, his honesty, his insight, his wisdom. Ricky has experienced the great highs of success and fame in the music business, as well as the painful lows of his struggles with addiction and substance abuse. And here he's very honest about it. It's no holds barred, because he tells us how he spiraled down into addiction and how he was able to pull himself out of it. It was very eye-opening to me how the methods and practices that his recovery is based on are the same methods and practices that are cultivated through meditation and mindfulness. Of course, meditation itself is very central to recovery, but he explains how other tenets, such as gratitude practice, service to others, and prayer are also instrumental. And I'm also indebted to Ricky for having introduced me to the phrase, "Your ego is not your amigo," a phrase I use ad infinitum, or as my students would say, ad nauseum. The ego being very problematic for all of us, but especially for those in the limelight, like artists. So without further ado, here is Ricky Bell.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Remember that?
Yeah. Here we go.
So now's the B turn.
There you go.
Right.
Everybody rise up.
So welcome, Ricky Bell.
Thank you for having me, Richard Wolf.
Great to see you again. It's been
Always good to see you, man.
So let's get right into it. Let's dive right into it.
Okay.
What are you doing here right now?
Well, what I'm doing here is picking up my book that you just wrote and put out called In Tune, Music as the Bridge to Mindfulness, which I think is an absolutely amazing name. Just from the first words, In Tune, it hits home with me. And thank you for this book. Thank you for writing it, and thanks for signing it, and thanks for thinking of me when you did write it.
Oh my God,
I appreciate it.
That's stunning. I'm speechless, almost speechless, because I'm still talking. But I mean, that's breathtaking.
Thank you.
That's not why I asked this question. All right, maybe we should start. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you. You've always been, we've known each other. It's no secret.
Yeah.
We've known each other a long time. We're 25 years now.
Yes.
And
25 years.
we started with the Poison. No, we started even before that with Laquan.
I think we did, and I actually think it's been longer than 25 years, because the year 2020 is the 30th anniversary of Belle Biv DeVoe.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, I stand. Math was never my strong suit.
It's okay.
Which is why I'm not a computer scientist.
There you go.
But you're right. It's been 30 years. Yeah. But anyway, let's talk about more important subjects than how long I've known you.
Right.
So, where do we start? Well, I want to start with what is one of the first questions I ask people is what got you into meditation to begin with?
Well, for me, meditation became prayer, and meditation became a significant tool of recovery for me. As you know, I struggled with addiction for many years. And, the practice of just spiritual principles in general, starting with honesty and surrender, and a big principle being, prayer, dependence on God, my creator, and meditating became a huge source for me in my recovery.
Right. So this is something that's relatively recent for you.
Yes.
Let's say in the last few years.
Yes.
Now, you started when you were just a wee, 12 years old?
Yeah. I started when I was 12 years old. We started New Edition
Right.
when I was 12, even before that, because we would break up and get back together. But once when I turned 12, we got together and stayed together and had our first record out when I was 15.
So you guys got together in talent shows, right?
Yeah, we were friends
Right.
before we started.
In Boston.
Before we started singing together, we played in the same basketball league, 13 and under basketball league, myself, Mike, and Bobby. And we went to a talent show one day and we saw this group perform and we heard the girl screaming and bell rang, the light bulb went off. We said, that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so who was not in the group at that point? Was Ronnie in the group?
Ronnie wasn't in the group.
No.
And Ralph wasn't in the group.
Oh, no.
No, I sang with Ralph, prior to entering New Edition. So it was Ricky and Ralph is what we were called. And when we got New Edition together, I said, hey, you got to meet my boy Ralph. And so it was the four of us until we started recording the Candy Girl album. Then Brooke brought his nephew Ronnie into the group.
So how many years was it between the time you guys started to sing together and you made your first record?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
So you've been, okay. So then with New Edition, then that blew up. That was in the early 80s,
That
right?
was in the early 80s. 1983 was the year Candy Girl came out, was our first single.
And you guys you were 15 at the time.
I was 15 at the time.
Wow. And you were patterned after the Jackson 5. Was that the inspiration for
Yeah,
that?
well, we joined the talent show and we did a medley. It was like Isaac Hayes and Walk On and and mixed with the Jacksons. We did I Want You Back and all that stuff. And when Maurice Starr heard Ralph sing I Want You Back and The Love You Save, he said, wow, I love this group. He had songs already written. He was just waiting for the right artist to come and record. And when he saw us in the talent show that he put on, he said, wow, when we went up to get our trophy, our second place trophy, he said, I'm going to bring him in the studio anyway. And he brought us to the studio. We recorded Jealous Girl, Is This the End, Popcorn Love, and Candy Girl, the first songs we did.
Now, Maurice Starr was already an established producer?
In Boston.
In Boston.
He had a small label in Boston called Boston International. Himself was on, his brother, Michael Johnson, had a group called the Johnson Crew.
So I'm wondering, when you start so young and you really don't know much else, right?
Yeah.
How do you think that shapes your view of the world? Can you have any idea of how that particular experience affected you?
Well, remember at the time we were very young, very green, very gullible. The furthest thing from your mind is that someone's going to steal from you or use you in any kind of way, exploit you. Where every little bit we got was more than what we ever had and more than what our friends, our peers, our family had. So we were, basically happy with what we got, having no idea that there's millions more to be had. Right. And so we're very gullible. And when we first signed and they tell you get $500, do you know how much $500 was to a kid that never had anything, that had to beg my mom for money to go get candy and a soda or some popcorn or whatever.
Sure.
So it was huge. I mean, I bought a moped that was, I got a VCR. I never had a VCR. It was like if your house had a VCR, you were just like huge. It was the VCR with the cord still attached to it. So at this time, it's, I don't know anything about business, know anything about contracts and these big words. And even if they handed me the contract, it was all foreign language to me at the time. It's like, I can't read this. I don't understand. I can't get past the first sentence in this contract. So it's like being an adult, having adult responsibilities, but as a kid. And we were put in a position where we had to learn and we had to take responsibilities, or, just end up back in the projects.
So on the one hand, you're really happy because relative to where you came from and all your
Right.
friends or everything, they have
Yeah.
relatively very little, right?
Right.
So the more that you had a little bit more, so that made you relatively, you were happy.
Yeah.
You were making music. You were having hit records.
Exactly.
Went hit after hit.
Yes.
And it was pop. These were pop hits. So they crossed over
Yeah, they
from
crossed
R&B.
over. Yeah,
And-
and then we didn't know the difference of R&B, pop, Billboard magazine, R&R. We didn't understand anything about how the record business worked.
Right. You just knew you guys were popular. You go to a gas. I remember going to a gas station hearing
Right.
Candy Girl,
Wow.
and over the loudspeakers.
That's crazy.
And going, wow.
Wow.
And so you had all this happening, and
Right.
behind the scenes, you were completely innocent. And like you said, they were stealing. You were given unfair,
Right.
grossly unfair deals, which
Right.
today would be much harder for people to get away with. It's a different era, I think, in terms of that
Yeah.
than it was back then. And so, but your state of mind
Yeah.
before you learned how badly you had missed out
Right.
was positive. I'm guessing.
It was very positive and young, wild, and free. I look back on those times like I think God had a plan, because if I had all of that money, right, at 17, 19 years old, I don't know if I would be here right now based on the mindset that I had and not being used to having anything. Because even the money that I did make, I did not manage it well,
Right.
regardless if I had the 20, 30 million that,
Right.
that I could have had. So I just think that it was in some way, I don't think I would have been very responsible with that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that you spending money back in the 90s when Belle Biv DeVoe was very successful.
Exactly.
You weren't that, shall we say, frugal
Not
or,
at
strategic with how you were spending money then.
Exactly. I showed up after every tour. I pulled up to your house or to the studio with a different car. Almost daily. I had 2 or 3 cars in my garage, and I'm single, living by myself in a 5-bedroom home up in Woodland Hills. I mean, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I couldn't say anything to you because
I wouldn't have listened anyway. Trust me, people tried. People tried to say a lot to me. Even my accountants, they tried. Hey, invest in this, invest in that. What is that? Come on, right? Even other people in the business tried to tell me.
So you guys enjoyed a really great run in
Yes.
the 80s.
Yep.
Enormously popular. Bobby Brown broke off.
Yes.
And he kind of filled Michael Jackson's spot there for a while.
Yeah,
And
man, it was just amazing.
he was 9 times platinum or something.
Yep,
He
exactly.
went, and Bobby had been one of the lead singers in New Edition. Then he
Yes.
goes off solo.
Yeah.
Don't Be Cruel and My Prerogative.
My God,
These
yeah.
amazing records.
Yeah.
And it's not only in, shall we say, R&B culture, it's all over the pop landscape.
Yeah.
That Bobby Brown is kind of his looming presence, looms over everything.
Absolutely.
And then so you guys now, you get Johnny Gill to come in, right?
Yeah.
So he took kind of Bobby's slot.
Well, I guess you could say that from a public standpoint, but the idea to put Johnny Gill in the group, when it was the 4 of us, we knew Ralph was going to go solo
Right.
after the next album. Like our image was always to have a 5-man group, 1 lead singer, the 4 guys step in the choreography, just that whole look in the background. So that was one reason. Another reason was to help us having another strong male singer, young male singer, to help us transition from the bubblegum sound into the young adult R&B sound.
Right.
And Johnny was like that perfect voice to help bridge that gap that we were trying to, transition into.
Right. And that was the Any Heartbreak album?
Yes,
Yeah.
produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
And then you guys broke off Ricky Bell, Ronnie DeVoe, and Michael Bivins into Bell Biv DeVoe.
Exactly.
And then you changed pop music
Thank
completely, because the Poison album that you guys made, that was the first album to cross over R&B, hip hop, and pop.
Wow.
Right?
Well, yes.
Yeah, that was the motto then, right?
Yeah.
Hip hop smoothed out on the R&B tip with a pop
feel
appeal
to it.
Nobody had ever done that before.
Wow.
Nobody had crossed over.
Yeah. And what we owe a lot of that to being bred with New Edition and our history with R&B music, because R&B was always the inspiration for us to get into music, to pursue music. It was what our parents played around the house. It was the artists that we looked up to, the Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye and the Jacksons, the Temptations. So that was our bread and butter. When hip hop came on the scene, you know, with Run DMC and the Fat Boys, and we were touring with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and all these other artists, Houdini, we're like, wow, like how can we, that music is what we listen to in our cars or at the club or at the after party. It wasn't Candy Girl. It wasn't Cool It Now. So for us, we're like, man, because if you notice, with New Edition, we would always have a rap on our songs. Right. So we were always, you know, influenced by hip hop as well. So with myself, Mike, and Ron, we like that. Nobody knew what to expect from us. So we knew when Jimmy Jam gave us the idea for Bell Biv DeVoe, we knew immediately what we wanted to do.
Right.
We was like, now is our time to have grimy, infectious beats that we could dance to, but still bring our R&B history into it with melodies and over the top of it.
Right. And it worked. It blew it up.
Thank you.
And they didn't even want to release Poison.
No.
I mean, the record company didn't want to release the song Poison.
Right.
They wanted to release the ballad, right?
Exactly. I mean, this was during a time when it was even hard to have a rap version on R&B radio.
Right.
They would take the rap out of certain songs.
Right.
And so when you hear Poison, the beat is more of a, you know, it's more of a hip hop kind of a beat. It wasn't regular R&B. So as soon as A.D. Washington heard it from MCA, he's like, I can't get this record played on the radio. They will not play this. But we knew we wanted that to be the first single. So we fought for it. We made the video, and, you know, we were able to get BET to play the video first and kind of create that street buzz. So, you know, the fans were just behind it even before it got to radio. So
people now take for granted that the same producer could work with Rihanna,
right,
that'll work with Young Thug.
Right.
And back when you started, when we came out with Poison, right, that was not a thing.
No.
Yeah. If you were a hip hop producer, but you got hip hop producers to work with you.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that was unique. That was different.
That was very unique and different.
And so that was ruling the airwaves, right? Like Bobby Brown, that sound of combining hip hop, R&B, and pop, that ruled the airwaves.
Absolutely.
And then, though, things changed again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so up until this point, you obviously had a lot of pressures and stress.
Right.
How did you cope with it? The pressures of the business, the pressures to be creative, the pressures to perform, and all that.
A lot of weed. To be honest with you, it wasn't like, for me, it wasn't about, you know, anything therapeutic as far as, you know, going to therapy or any kind of recovery tools or, you know, practicing meditation or prayer or whatever. It was just that state of mind of, you know, staying inebriated, you know, staying numb, so to speak. Now that I look back on it, was just a lot of weed, was just the coping mechanism for me at that time, along with alcohol as well.
I'll never forget the first time I was in the studio with you guys. That wasn't in my house. That was a different studio.
Right.
And the way you guys were smoking weed, I just couldn't believe it. It was like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I'd never seen that before. I'd see people smoke.
Oh, yeah.
But not the way you guys never, I mean, you particularly, I don't want to talk about anybody else, but you never stopped smoking. It was like constant.
Because it went with everything that I did. It was like, oh, I'm waking up. Oh, you smoke some weed. Oh, I'm going to the studio, especially to mix a song, to hear music without being high was foreign, was unheard of to me. So if I'm going to mix, or if I'm going to watch a movie, or if I'm going to write and get in a creative space, I had to be high. At least that's what I believed at the time. So it just went with everything we do. When we was recording that first Belle Biv DeVoe album, we would go, we did a lot of it in New York. We would go to the studio. We stayed across the bridge in Jersey at the Embassy Suites Hotel. We would get back to the hotel around 3, 4 in the morning. We would stay up, smoke weed, and we would write out everything that we wanted to accomplish. I mean, and everything from what we were going to wear to what the first song in the show was going to be, to the video concepts, how we were going to introduce it on the American Music Awards. Like we would stay up all night. And so that practice of smoking weed and being in that creative space was something that went hand in hand for me.
Yeah, but you guys could function. That was amazing to me. Like, yeah, with all the weed you were smoking from the time you woke up in the morning, you guys functioned. You were able to go to meetings. Yeah. You couldn't tell by talking to you that you were high.
No, because it was, at a certain point, you notice with like when it comes to drugs and alcohol, there's a point where you're doing it and it's recreational and you're having fun and it's party and it's all about having a good time, and then there's that invisible line that you cross where you're doing it because you have to, and being in reality and just being comfortable in your own skin and a sober mind feels so uncomfortable. The world feels like a very almost violent place unless you're numbed out in some kind of way.
Why do you think that is?
I think that when you don't learn how to process your thoughts and your feelings and certain things that happen to you that may be traumatic events in your life, whether it be in emotional trauma or anything like that, if that's not processed in the right way, in a healthy way, and you learn to numb those feelings and numb those thoughts out, it's almost like, oh, this situation feels uncomfortable. Oh, let me do a line, or let me smoke some coke, let me smoke some weed. Oh, that's the answer. Now I can deal with it. Now, it doesn't take the issue away, but it kind of turns off that pain that you would normally feel in that situation. And so it becomes it's almost like a trigger. Oh, fear, smoke. Oh, anxiety, drink, whatever it is, it becomes automatic.
So it's interesting you talked about the situation that you're in. Mm-hmm. So when you're making music, when you're in the studio, you're on stage,
right?
It's a kind of a high in itself, right?
Absolutely.
And so there you're happy and you're in a situation that feels comfortable.
Exactly.
But then the music stops and you got to live your real life.
Exactly.
And that's when things get to be painful and uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And I think do you think for us musicians it's more acute because we are so comfortable and so feeling so transcendent and high when we make music, and then we transition into a state of mind that's completely, like you said, you said violent, which I never thought of, but it's pretty rash and raw and brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it's musicians and creative people are very sensitive in a sense. We're very emotional. We feel life very acutely. Everything is sensitive to us. And so, and when you take your art very seriously, when you're whether you're on stage or you finished an album or a record or whatever, when people hear it, you could tell yourself, well, it's for me, and I don't care what other people think or whatever. But we were sensitive to that. And and you got to understand, for New Edition and for me, from the time we started performing, even before we ever had a record out, it's been scream, it's been high energy. We won every talent show. Every record we put out was a hit. Every tour was a success. It was just sell out. I mean, we would sell out Madison Square Garden 4 nights in 1 year. And so everything was just high. We were just used to that high.
Right.
And so once everything starts to calm down, and then every record is not a hit, and every show is not a sellout, and we're getting home, and I'm like seeing, like, oh my God, I got a bill. Like, I actually have to write a check and pay this bill, like, myself, or call the phone company or the water and power company and figure out how, like, that was just all foreign to me. Like, everything was always done for me, so it was never thought of like, oh, let me balance my checkbook. Let me see how much is in my, like, okay, I have this much to spend. Let me put myself on a budget. It was just like, everything came so easy.
So when all the cheering died down,
Yeah.
and the hits, your number one records, become number 20 records, and then
Exactly.
they fall down.
One of the most traumatic events in my life was the Home Again tour, when, because we had Belle Biv DeVoe success. We had success as solo entities, Bobby, Johnny, Ralph. But then we came back together. Our process for getting ready to go on tour, it looks something like this. We would have hours of choreography rehearsal. We would have hours of just band rehearsal with just music, figuring that out, just vocals rehearsals. And then we would videotape our rehearsals, watch it, critique it, figure out, okay, that's not working. We were very, strategic, and, it's systematic the way we did it. When we came back together for Home Again, it was just complete mayhem. I mean, all of that science and how we did it before was just completely out the window. We never ran the whole show on the Home Again tour from top to bottom, all the way through until opening night in Boston. So we never knew what it was going to be.
So you had everybody back together because you obviously, Belle Biv DeVoe had hit records.
Right.
Bobby Brown had hit records.
Right.
Ralph Tresvant had a hit record, a
Yes.
platinum record.
Yes.
A platinum and a half, I think. And Johnny, of course, was amazingly successful. So all you guys as solo artists were successful. Now you come back together and the egos.
And then you have all the egos.
The egos.
And so the fear for me was night after night, not knowing who's going to show up, if they're going to show up, right? Who they're going to be when they show up. And what the hell is this show going to be out here in front of 20,000 people that we hadn't rehearsed, back to back. So so just that fear of like, oh my God, like, doesn't anybody else care, like, that we're going on stage and we don't know what we look like? I mean, that just frightened the heck out of me. And then night after night, there was going to be an event, but not knowing what was going to happen. So every night it was something else. Either somebody just didn't show up, or the show went on for 2 hours late, or Brooke, had a heart attack and had to be rushed to the hospital. So it was just, and then finally getting home.
Brooke, your manager, had a heart attack. Yeah.
And then finally getting home at the end of that and being broke. And the foreclosure on my house, the notes on my house, and my car is being repossessed. And for me, so much of my identity was wrapped up in who I was, what I did, what I drove, where I lived, what I wore, who I hung out with. I'm Ricky Bell from New Edition and Belle Biv DeVoe, and that became how I lived, how I even saw myself, and how I thought I was supposed to be to the outside world. So when all of that was stripped away, I'm in a state. I'm like, well, who am I? I'm fearing even going outside to show people, look, I don't have it together here. I don't even know who I am. You're gonna see me just raw without anything. And that was like one of the most traumatic events in my life. And it was right when I found ecstasy and cocaine, because that, for me at the time, was the cure.
So you went from weed
Yep.
to ecstasy and cocaine at that point.
At that point, yes.
Because of everything you just explained.
Exactly. I mean, it became the solution for me. It numbed all that fear and all that pain, and it let my ego come back, and I could still pretend to be who I thought you needed me to be, who I thought you wanted me to be. I could still be that Ricky Bell.
Well, there's a lot of sides to Ricky Bell that I know from the beginning.
Yeah.
And the side that you're talking about is one side.
Yes.
But there's always been a side, particularly with you, that's got a very deep spiritual soul. I think you've always had that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is surprising, but I guess when you get the realities of, like you say, your house is getting foreclosed. These are big crises that you're going through.
Right.
And it kind of clouds everything in your mind, right? That's all you can think about.
Yeah, because also the ego says, don't go ask for help. You can't do that. Like, you can't, how dare you let somebody know that get vulnerable and let someone know that you don't have it together. Go ask somebody how to refinance my home. It's practical. It's people do it all the time, but I built this life and this ego running the show that I would not dare let you see me that vulnerable and ask for help. I didn't think that I could do that at that time. Yeah.
So, like somebody said, your ego is not your amigo. I think it was you.
Yeah.
That taught me that.
Yeah.
Your ego is not your
not your amigo, because I believe that the ego, in a sense, is good for confidence, and when you're being creative, when you're performing, and when you're in that space, we all want to have that confidence and feel sure about ourselves. So, in that sense, I do believe our Creator gave us an ego to be used in a healthy way. But when it comes for, real life human issues of trying to pretend that you have it all together when you don't, that's when your ego is not your amigo. That's when it is not your friend. It's actually, a liability and not an asset.
So how did you make that transition to know to ask for help? And
Well, I had to hit bottom. I had to get to the point where, the cocaine, and the weed and all the drugs weren't numbing me anymore. They would not allow me to escape all of my problems and my issues. Like, they literally, like in a physical way, actually stop working. Like, my body would just get numb, but my head could still, I couldn't get to that euphoric place. And I had to get into a space where I was in so much pain emotionally and physically, and just feeling spiritually broken and hopeless, that I had no choice but to say, hey, I don't have it together. I need help. And I want to share this story with you. We were getting ready to go on tour, and our opening night was in DC. This was probably maybe 15 years ago. We had a couple nights off before the opening night. I stayed up the whole 48 hours doing blow in my room by myself, just doing blow, doing shots, right? Come up to, it's time to do the show, maybe a couple of hours before lights. I can't perform. There's no way. I can barely stand up. And I'm fucked. I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I can't. I'm wired. I can't sleep. There's no way I could perform. I've lost my voice. So for the first time, I actually have to come out, because before I was sneaking. Nobody really knew what was going on with me. I was able to do it on the off days, but this time I crossed that line, and I've never missed a show. Even when I was sick, I've always gone on stage. So I called Mike and I called Johnny to my room, and I say, hey man, I've been using blow, and for 2 days I can't do the show, man. I'm just physically, I'm done. And they were shocked, and they're like, wow, man, we had no idea why you didn't tell us. And, all the questions came, but you know what, we're going to support you. And I had a moment of clarity, because Mike said, you know what, I need you to come to the show anyway. I need you to come to the venue and sit in the dressing room. So I sit in the dressing room, and I'm laying on the couch, and the lights go down, and I hear the screams, and they go out, and the crowd is still screaming. And my parts are being sang, and the show is going on without me. So the moment for me was like, shit, life is going on. Whether I'm here or not, they're going to continue to go on, and they have to move on. So it was like, wow, I need to get it together. I need to get it together. And so I struggled through the rest of that tour of trying to stay clean and perform. But at the end of that tour, I checked into rehab, my first rehab.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was your first rehab?
That was my first rehab. I did 5. It took me 5 rehabs.
Why?
Because a crazy thing happens that I noticed. There were certain events that went on in my life that I used as an excuse to use, but now it's just BS. When things weren't going right at home, and I couldn't handle the pressure emotionally or mentally, it was just too much for me, and I wanted to escape. I used drugs to escape. One time I got 2.5 years sober and my sponsor relapsed. So I was like, oh, well, I might as well too. So just certain things like that were going on. But one thing I did notice was this, and this is when I really started getting in touch with, spirituality and stuff, was the practice of spiritual principles. Meaning, like, if I could surrender in a way where I'm just admitting, look, I don't have it together. I have no idea what I'm doing and I really need help. And just be honest about that, an amazing peace came over me because I'm no longer fighting. I'm no longer trying to control it and figure it all out myself. I can let go. And so, and then I read something that said, because I've always believed in God, right? But not in a sense of like I'm practicing the word of God. I'm not really listening to what he's saying and how to apply it in my life. I'm just believing that there's a higher source and a creator and, that runs the universe. And that's as far as it went. I would go to church just to say that I went. I'm not listening to the pastor or anything. I'm looking at my clock the whole time. But now it was suggested that so I read something that said, although you believed in God, you've never really cleaned house, my insides, so that the grace of God could enter me and do for me what I couldn't do for myself. And that really hit home for me. So the practice of honesty, the practice of sharing what's really going on inside of me, all of my fears, all of my resentments, and even all of my wrongs.
Sharing with who?
Sharing with somebody that I trust.
So who did you share it with?
I shared it with my mentor at first,
Okay.
and then the people that were close to me that I trusted. So, it was a daily practice. It was, kind of like a one-time thing, but then more of a daily practice of just practicing vulnerability. This amazing thing happens, like the obsession to use substances, like, was actually lifted from me. It's like, wow, like I don't have that compulsion to run to drugs, to not feel the realities of life, because it didn't have to be an issue that made me want to use. It was just being alive, any addict's natural state is irritability, restlessness, and discontent. And to get out of that, so peace and serenity is kind of fleeing. Like, it comes and it goes based on how other people or whatever the situations are around me.
You don't have to be an addict to be irritable.
Right.
I get irritable all the time.
And you know what? And so once the drugs were taken away, I also discovered that, wow, I don't have a drug problem. I have a me problem. Because I only have a drug problem when I put it in my system and I have an allergic reaction. Once I put it in, I got to keep going. It's hard for me to stop. But once you take it away, I'm irritable, I'm restless, I'm discontent, I'm unhappy I have to practice forgiveness daily. I have to practice surrender and honesty and acceptance and service and meditation and gratitude consciously daily. Like daily, I write out a gratitude list. At the end of my day, I write about what I was feeling that day. Do I owe any amends? Do I owe an apology to anybody? What did I do that I would like to do over? Like, I practice these things on a conscious level. So that I keep it in front of me.
Wow. And you do that every night?
I do it every night.
That's a practice.
It's a practice.
Yeah.
But because for me, I could get so caught up in life and in world, and all of a sudden I'm starting to isolate. I'm picking up resentments over there. I'm manipulating situations over there, and and next thing you know, I'm smoking and drinking again. And I'm like, well, what happened? Because I have to practice this God consciousness, meditation, and prayer. I have to make it a practice. I have to make it a part of my life, like brushing my teeth and eating healthy food.
Yeah, and you do it every day.
I try to do it every single day.
So the prayer every day.
Yes.
The gratitude, the attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
Which brings a lot of joy, right?
Absolutely.
It lights up parts of your brain with the same parts that are happiness.
Exactly.
Right?
Because what I'm doing is, when I'm like, because there were times when life was great,
Yeah.
But my brain said it could be better. Let's go get some blow, and really turn this party up. Right? So I had to learn how to be happy.
Yeah.
So basically I look at it like when I'm using other substances, right, to get euphoric, I'm basically telling my creator, this is not good enough for me. I need to make it better. It means I'm being ungrateful for what it is.
Right.
So I have to practice that on a conscious level. And every day I literally roll out of bed onto the floor, onto my knees and pray. Before I do anything, before I pick up my phone or communicate with anybody, I pray and I meditate and I try to get centered.
It's amazing. Some of the things you've been saying are said in a little bit different way,
Right.
in the traditions that I learned, meditation, like Buddhist tradition, whatever. For instance, you say, "I don't know everything." When I give myself up and say, "You know what? I don't know."
Right.
There's a thing in Zen that's called the don't know mind, and that's the goal, to have a beginner's mind, a don't know mind, to recognize, so that way you can be open to whatever is happening.
Exactly.
And your ego is not getting in the way.
Exactly. The practice of humility and character building, from the inside. My experience is when I worked on my character, when I practice humility, everything else falls into place. Because I used to have a belief that if I could just get my career back on track, if I could just make enough money, get another hit record, maybe fulfill all of my sexual fantasies, all of these outside things. If I could just get all of these things, then I would be okay. If everybody else will just act right, like I need them to act, right? From my wife to my group members to the guy on the freeway, like, depending on all the outside things for my peace. That was my belief. And then I found that I'm completely powerless over all of these things. It is a spiritual axiom that says every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, we're the ones that are at fault.
Right. Yeah.
If I'm not the problem, there is no solution, because I'm the only one that can change is me. I'm responsible for me.
Yeah. It's such an established truth, but it's so hard to get to.
Yes.
Shakespeare said there's nothing in Hamlet, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Exactly.
And then you said about being dissatisfied.
Right.
You're thinking, I should have more. You're comparing, you're not satisfied.
Right.
And that's the root of suffering.
Exactly.
Is having an idea of it should be different than what it is.
Right. And I can have no peace
right,
unless I accept this person, place, thing, this situation as exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Now, you can still set boundaries.
Yes.
But you know that you can't control.
That's right.
The only thing you can control is how you're responding to whatever's happening.
That's the key.
That's it.
That part is mine.
Yeah.
Right.
And so with meditation,
yes,
that goes a long way
to
freeing oneself from the ego.
Yes.
And freeing oneself from these ideas and concepts.
Right.
And the whole idea that we can know really what's going on unless we really just stop talking to ourselves.
Exactly.
So tell me about your meditation practice. Did they teach you this in rehab? How did you get around to meditating?
Each person is free to kind of get creative and discover your own practice with meditation. So I've tried, different apps or just different things of, because for me, trying to turn my mind off is like, it's such a challenge. And even just with daily meditation, like I do spot check inventory, and like I could just, sometimes when I'm driving in my car, I'll pull over before I get out and just do 5 minutes of meditation or a minute of it just to, to get recentered. And the goal for me is to bring my mind, body, spirit, and soul all together into one, bring it and just be, that phrase, be the best version of yourself. It's kind of like a fleeing to me because I judge myself way too much. So if I get it wrong, like that's not going to go good for me, and I'm going to get it wrong, right?
Yeah, I got the wrong version. I want my money back.
Exactly. So I don't go with that. I'm learning to accept me, my past, my present, exactly the way it is, and I ask God to help me see my day, help me see this situation in a way that doesn't hurt so much. Right? What is the best way that I can look at my life and look at others and serve my fellows? And when, the core of any addiction is self-centeredness. It's all about me. The treatment for that is service to others. So when I can present myself to my God and how he can best use me that day, it is the direct cure, to the self-centeredness and having everything, needing everything to go my way and to be all about me. And I try to, with meditation, is turn down all the noise and just be. When I go outside in my backyard and I'm listening to the wind and I could see the flowers and the beautiful trees and I hear the birds and, I hear the kids playing in the background. To me, that's just all of creation just being.
Right.
And so what I want to do is get in tune with that, with creation, with my creator, and just be.
Just be.
Just be.
You don't need to be a hit ranking star. You don't need to be Bell Biv DeVoe. You don't need to be a Beatle. Just be.
Yep. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to meditation, prayer, and depending on your creator, I think it's a very good idea that I need God. I think it's a good idea that I always need to depend on something else other than myself. So when situations happen in my life and I don't have the answer, I look at that as like, oh, this is good. Because now I don't have to be in fear, because when I'm in fear, I'm in fear because of my own limitations and what I'm able to figure out and what I'm able to do with my own talent or my own knowledge. So that's where the fear comes, because I don't know the answer. And now I have anxiety. So the good news is that, oh, this is good. It's good for me not to have all the answers, because now my ego's running the show, right? If you're right all the time, then you're hanging around the wrong people.
And you can't learn anything.
Exactly.
You know everything already. So
Right.
what can you learn? How can you grow?
Right.
How can you see reality for what it is if you already know? You think you know.
Exactly.
And you talk about God, and some people might think, well, I don't know about God, but there's different terms for the same thing. It could be universal mind.
Yep.
And
I think that people, it's based on experience, which I get that, there are hypocrites, and a lot of us were grown up in situations or in families where, religion was presented in a way that wasn't loving, that wasn't non-judgmental, was very punishing, and then it was, very hypocritical with the people that were teaching us that, so I get it. And, certain lifestyles or whatever, well, I don't, I'm not going to believe in a God that's against, the way I think or what I feel, but that's not, my loving God, is like how I would want to be, right? Non-judgmental, accept you, my fellows exactly the way they are. Right. So, I get that, when people have, differences or,
But I think it's just, in some ways, it's just another term for saying ultimate reality.
Right.
Or the source of all being.
Exactly.
You use the word God, and different cultures will use a different term. In our culture, we could say, like I said, ultimate reality.
Right.
I mean, you're not beating your heart. It's the universe beating your heart, right?
Exactly.
You're not tending to the 4,000 taste buds in your tongue. The universe put it there.
There you go.
And, that's, you could say it's God, you could say the universe, but we all know it's not this being in this bag of flesh that's doing it.
Exactly.
Right.
There you go. And so when we're trying to control ourselves and trying to control life to go the way that we think it should go, it's almost like we're fighting against the whole universe when we're doing that. Because the sun is rising. The moon is the trees are going to continue. Like the universe is going to operate. And I'm fighting that, which is already in existence. So why don't I just be and let it flow?
The show's going to go on with or without you, right?
There you go. Exactly. There you go.
So what specifically would you say to, young musicians
Right.
that are trying to, maybe they have a little bit of success or they
Mm-hmm.
want
Right.
to make a life in music. How to keep balance, how to keep personal integrity
Yeah.
and harmony.
I would say it's kind of like a threefold. It starts with yourself, and then it starts with your, it goes from yourself to your family, then your community. And I think that when it comes to self, like for me, it was hard for me to grow and get help because I wasn't taking responsibility for myself and my own decisions. And I had to learn to take the word blame out of my thought and my speech. So I had to say, stop saying, well, I'm stressful and I'm using because the group is not acting right, and and they're costing me money and this and that. It's like it's just, it wasn't working. So that means, my life will get better as soon as they start acting right. I have to take responsibility for that.
To take blame out of your vocabulary.
Take blame right up, because it was not working.
Okay.
And even for a person like me, even when I was offended, someone did hurt me, it was dangerous for me to have anger and resentment because of what I would do with anger and resentment. Like resentment is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, right?
Yeah.
So resentment did me no good. Mm-hmm. Even though I had a right to be resentful, it was killing me. Mm-hmm. So I had to start with an inventory of the things that were personal, that were defects, that were liabilities for me, and anger and fear and self-obsession, and these things were just causing me the most harm more than anything. So I had to start with the character building of myself. And the reason why I spoke about, I thought I needed to have all of these things for life to be right. What I did found is when I focused on my character building, everything else seemed to fall in place. I didn't have to work so hard or try to control when the next show was or when the next record was, or, how my relationship, I just had to practice, the will of God, the will of my creator for my life, and practicing asking God, okay, can you give me the knowledge of what your will is for me today, just for today? And then please bless me with the power to carry that out, because I believe that we are created in such a way that we are only able to handle the duties for today. A lot of times,
For the present moment.
Exactly.
Stay in the present moment.
There you go. A lot of times when I'm uncomfortable, it's because I'm too far in the past, or I'm too far in the future, and I'm fearing the future, or I'm resentful about the past, which I have no control over. So I'm asking my creator to bring me back to the moment and give me what I need to handle this moment. When I'm able to do that, when I'm able to be aware, practice aware when I'm out of line.
So that's the second factor?
The second, that's the first is all of, let me get my character right.
Right.
All right. And then let me get my house, my physical house, my, whether it be my kids or my wife or whatever, because that's going to be an offspring of myself. Right.
Right.
Because those are the things that I worry about. It's like, that's the stuff that's within those are my responsibilities. Is what God has placed in my responsibility, right? Because these people, and also I used to think that this is not hurting anybody but me. This is my thing. Like, why can't I, that entitlement, I should be able to go take breaks and, and use drugs and watch porn, or, just destroy my life because I'm only hurting me, which is such a lie. And it's such denial.
Why?
Because reality, if I can be aware of how I'm affecting everybody else, I affect my wife, I affect her relationship with her family, and all the people that I'm close to is affected if I die, right? It's not ego, it's just people really do love me and care about me. People are affected by my life. My band is, society is, my fans are, like there's so, and people that I will never meet are affected. That's the responsibility that I've been given. So I have a responsibility placed on me, and I can't escape that. So it's about getting this house, my physical house, my community, and leaving Everything that I've gone through, everything that I'm living right now is to be of service and shared with others. It's not just about me anymore. It's about how can I pass this on to the next man, because that is what lives in eternity. That's what's going to keep going on. What I give without expecting anything in return, that's what's going to go on way after I'm gone. That legacy right there of me sharing that. And that's what's ultimately important to me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's so true and so beautiful.
Thank you.
So it sounds like the daily practices that you do
Right.
naturally is what you're advising works for everybody. The gratitude practice.
Absolutely.
In your case, there's prayer,
Yes.
meditation,
Yep.
and service, compassion
Yes.
for other people.
Yep.
And trying to do good and give other people some shared knowledge or whatever it is you can do to help somebody live a better life.
Exactly.
Or
When you're
diminish their suffering a little bit.
Exactly. When you're in a creative, business where you're going to be on stage and people are going to be looking, they're going to be watching you, not just with your music, they're going to be watching your life. And they're going to watch and see how you get through your struggles, your battles. And it's going to hit home for a lot. It's going to speak to a lot of people in deeper ways than even your music and your craft will. And that is something that I beginning to notice, because I don't think that we are here just to be famous or just to make a lot of money and, to have hit records or whatever. There's way more to it. I've been in those positions and I've always felt like, well, I need another hit record because that's not satisfying me anymore. I need more money. Like those holes will never be filled with those outside things. But meaningful service and being useful is the key for me to happiness. I really believe that.
So circling back, it's like what you said before. I believe it's like brushing your teeth, or we talked about this.
Yeah.
Like it's something you have to do every day
It is.
in order to condition yourself to feel this way and to live this kind of life. It's not like an abstract thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to do service or whatever. You have to sit and do the gratitude or sit and do the meditation
Yeah.
and do something where you're in service to other people.
Most of us are not motivated by just goodwill of, just wanting to do good. A lot of times pain becomes the motivating factor. Pain is the touchstone to all spiritual growth, because we have to, that's why in addiction they always say you have to hit bottom, because what person is going to want to practice honesty and service and forgiveness unless he has to do these things to save his life? So sometimes, we have to get to a point where all of our resources, all of our money, our talent, our knowledge, or whatever, cannot fix the problem, cannot fix us. It can't. You've reached the end of your rope. And it takes that pain to get you to a point of desperation, to get you to a point of willingness to say, okay, I give up. Okay, Creator. Okay, God, what do I need to do? I'm just going to shut up and I'm just going to listen. Just tell me what I got to do, because I'm scared and I'm desperate and I've tried everything and nothing else works. So, when you ask, what else would I tell young people? It's like, listen, you can try it your own way, and you will become very powerful in your field and you will make it. If you're talented, you will make it. But don't believe the lie that success is the key to your happiness, because it won't be. Service to others, taking care of yourself, practicing humility, character building. Those are the keys. Mm-hmm. Those are the keys to the kingdom.
Happiness is an inside job.
That's right. It really is. Because real joy is not a feeling. It's just knowing the truth that even when things are not all right, it's still okay. I'm still going to be okay. That's joy on a deep level. And I believe that, happy, joyous, and free is a goal, is the ultimate goal, is the life that we want. And it's not based on what I have. It's just based on who I am. It's who I was created to be.
Oh. I think is there anything else you want to talk about that we didn't cover?
Oh man, I don't know. I think we pretty much covered everything. But I think that whatever system, whether you're a believer, whether you're not, whether you're an atheist or whether you believe in God or whether you're unsure or whatever. I believe that true spiritual principles are never in conflict. Love is love, right?
Yeah, I mean,
integrity is integrity. You can live by these things and still not believe in God,
right?
Because they will always, they will always bear fruit. They will always bear fruit in your life if you put character building ahead of. Right? Ahead of things. You practice that way of life, you will always get what you want. Always.
Yeah, well, it's been eye-opening to me. What's eye-opening to me is that you come, and I mentioned this before, with so many of the virtues and the qualities that we talk about that mindfulness practice is supposed to bring you to: compassion, right?
That's awesome.
Selflessness,
yes.
Right? And tolerance,
yes.
and the don't know mind, and you're coming from it from a divine point, which happens, by the way, in Hindu culture and mystical Christianity, mystical Judaism. You're coming from a divine point, but you can also come from the mindfulness practice. And it's so interesting to hear your context, both from music and from the belief in God.
Awesome.
And so, tell me, how do people find you if they want to hear more and learn more about Ricky Bell?
Well, I'm very reachable at Mr. Ricky Bell on all social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can hit me up anytime. Always checking it. I have a publicist and I have a manager that's always checking my messages and passing on the important ones to me. So if there's any other questions or things that I can do to help anyone out, that's looking for relief or recovery in any way, I surrender my life to that.
Any plans for the fall or for next year?
Absolutely. Well, we in October, we do the Japan leg of the tour. And then after that, we're going to come back and prepare for 2020, which is the 30th anniversary of Belle Biv DeVoe. Yes. So,
wow.
Yeah. So new record, book, documentary, movie, the whole 9 yards for BBD. It's going to be really, really exciting.
Wow. Yeah. I can't wait for that. That's
can't believe it's been 30 years, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been, like I said before, as long as I've known you, 30 years, I guess, you've always had this deep wisdom and been a very spiritual and soulful person.
Yeah.
And I guess it was always there.
Right.
And now it's just in full bloom.
Well, thank you.
It's just in totally full bloom.
And I can't say enough about how, one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to ask for help was because I thought I had it all together. I was always the one that was at rehearsal early and stayed late and wanted to do the right thing. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I didn't think I needed any more help until I got to the point where I didn't have a choice. And I met some other people in the business, some other guys in the business that I'll introduce you to, that really stuck their hand out for me and said, hey man, I got what you got. I understand, let me help you. So
beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me, man. This is amazing. I don't do interviews like this, so this is very rare for me. This is really exciting, man. So, thank you for this book. I cannot wait to get into this. This comes right on time because I'm about to go on tour, and it'll be a very important tool in me getting ready for my day and then winding down as I sit in my bath with the candles lit and meditating after the show. So thank you so much for this.
Great. Thank you so much.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. That was a stone groove, not to mention a lot of fun. Thank you again, Ricky Bell. And Ricky can be followed on Instagram and all social media with his handle, which is at Mr. Ricky Bell. And Mr. is spelled M-R. Ricky is R-I-C-K-Y, and Bell is B-E-L-L, so at Mr. Ricky Bell. And Ricky wants you to know that this is the 30th anniversary of the release of Bell Biv DeVoe's first album, Poison, which has sold about 4 million records. And I also would like to encourage you, my new listeners, to follow us on our social media, which is at Wolf in Tune. And Wolf is spelled like the animal, which is W-O-L-F, in tune. That's one word. It's also the title of my book was In Tune, Music as a Bridge to Mindfulness, so that's the connection there. And we're also on all social media. And I would like to invite you to please share the podcast with your friends, give us a good review, subscribe to us if you enjoyed what you heard and you think you might enjoy what you will be hearing. I also want to thank Christina Higa for helping us produce this podcast. I want to thank the great intern, James Leno. And, of course, I have to thank the incomparable, multi-talented co-producer, Hannah Bowers. Until next time, stay in tune.